Why you keep attracting the wrong people. The truth no one tells you. Naya had been proposed to, twice. She'd been told, "I love you," more times than she could count. People thought she was lucky. What they didn't know was that every person who said they loved her eventually made her question her own sanity. One boyfriend called her too sensitive. Another disappeared every weekend and came back with flowers. Made her feel guilty for expecting basic respect. Different people, different stories, the same ending. One night, sitting on her bedroom floor surrounded by old photos and unread messages, Naya asked herself a question that terrified her. Why does this keep happening to me? She thought the answer was that she'd been meeting the wrong people. She had no idea. The answer had been following her since she was 10 years old. Most people think heartbreak begins the day someone leaves. It doesn't. Sometimes it begins years before you ever meet them, long before the first kiss, long before the first "I love you," long before the first goodbye. For Naya, she didn't know the difference between patience and towardea. She didn't know the difference between patience and self-abandonment. The first proposal came from Ethan. They met at a charity fundraiser. He had an easy smile and a way of making everyone in the room feel important. It started in a small yellow house at the end of a quiet street. Every evening at exactly 6 o'clock, she would hear the front gate creak open. She would run toward the door. "Dad." He'd smile. Sometimes. Other times, he'd walk straight past her without saying a word. Not because he hated her, because he was. Work was stressful. Life was heavy. At least, that's what everyone said. Naya learned something without realizing she was learning it. Love depended on someone's mood. Some days it was warm. Some days it some days it disappeared. And there was nothing she could do except wait for it to come back. By the time she turned 28, waiting had become a habit. Waiting for texts. Waiting for apologies. Waiting for people to become who they promised they would be. Her friends called her patient. She called herself understanding. The truth, she didn't know the difference between patience and self-abandonment. Most people are just waiting for their turn to talk. She laughed. "So, are you saying I'm special?" "I'm saying I've been looking for someone like you." No one had ever said that to her before. Not like that. Not while looking directly into her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt chosen. Not while looking directly into her eyes. For the first time in years, dating Ethan felt effortless. He sent voice notes just to hear her laugh. He remembered tiny details. Her favorite dessert. The song she always skipped because it reminded her of her grandmother. The way she hated driving in heavy rain. He noticed everything. Or so she thought. 3 months later, little things began to change. He'd make plans. Then cancel an hour before. "I'm exhausted. Can we do tomorrow?" Tomorrow became next week. Next week became soon. But whenever Naya looked disappointed, he somehow knew exactly what to say. "I've just been under pressure. You know, you're the best thing that's happened to me. You understand me better than anyone." She wanted to believe him. So she did, because believing him felt easier than accepting the possibility that she was slowly becoming an option instead of a priority. One Friday evening, Naya stood outside a restaurant, wearing a blue dress she'd spent nearly an hour choosing. 7 o'clock came. Then 7:30. The waiter approached gently. "Would you like to order while you're waiting?" She smiled politely. "I'm sure he'll be here at 8:15. Her phone vibrated. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. S. Something came up. Rain check? No explanation. No phone call. Just 7 words. She stared at the screen. For a moment, she almost went home. Instead, she ordered dinner, for one. She smiled at strangers. Answered the waiter's questions. Even complimented the food. Anyone watching would have thought she was perfectly fine. They couldn't hear the conversation happening inside her head. Don't overreact. He's probably stressed. Relationships take understanding. Don't become one of those demanding women. So, she forgave him before he'd even apologized. The next morning, there was a bouquet waiting outside her apartment. White lilies. Her favorite. Attached was a handwritten note. "I'm the luckiest man alive. I'll make it up to you." And somehow, he always did. Not by changing. By distracting her. Weekend trips, long hugs, late-night conversations about their future. Just enough affection to erase yesterday's disappointment. Not enough consistency to build tomorrow's trust. I didn't realize she was surviving on emotional breadcrumbs. Because breadcrumbs still look like food. When you've been starving for reassurance. 6 months later, Ethan proposed. Her family screamed. Social media exploded with congratulations. No one saw what happened. 2 hours before those pictures were taken, Naya had found messages on his phone. Nothing obvious. That proved cheating. Just conversations with another woman that felt too familiar, too intimate. When she asked about them, Ethan sighed. You really don't trust me." "I was just asking." "You always assume the worst." "I didn't say that." "So, why are we even talking about this?" By the end of the conversation, Naya was apologizing. Akaber for asking, for doubting, for making the evening stressful, walking home that night. She couldn't remember how the argument had started. She only remembered feeling guilty. It happened so gradually. She didn't notice her confidence shrinking. They got engaged anyway, because everyone has flaws. Because relationships are hard. Because love means fighting for each other. At least, that's what she kept telling herself. One rainy afternoon, she met her old university friend, Chloe. They hadn't seen each other in years. After catching up, Chloe asked the simplest question. "So, are you happy?" Naya answered too quickly. "Of course, Chloe. Spurs." Chloe smiled. "No, that wasn't an answer." Silence. Naya. Naya looked out the cafe window. People hurried through the rain. "I think," she whispered, "I'm always trying to get back to the beginning, the person he was when we first met." Chloe stirred her coffee. "What if," she said softly, "the beginning wasn't who he really was?" Naya frowned. "What do you mean?" "What if the beginning was just enough to make sure you'd stay long enough to accept everything that came after?" The words lingered between them for the first time. Naya didn't defend Ethan. She couldn't, because somewhere deep inside, she knew exactly what Chloe meant. But admitting it would mean admitting something even more painful, that maybe She hadn't been holding on to love. She'd been holding on to hope, and hope can keep a person trapped far longer than reality ever could. The conversation with Chloe should have changed everything. It didn't. Not immediately. Because the hardest habits to break, are the ones that once kept you safe. For the next few weeks, Naya convinced herself that she had simply been overthinking. Ethan became attentive again. He called more often. He planned dates. He even started talking about wedding venues. It almost felt like the man she had fallen in love with had returned. Almost. One evening, while they were having dinner with friends, Ethan laughed and said, "You know, Naya, she'd apologize if someone stepped on her foot." Naya laughed, too. But something about it stayed with her. On the drive home, she quietly asked, "Why did you say that?" He shrugged. It was a joke. I know, Jaime. It embarrassed me. He sighed loudly. So now, I can't joke with my own fiancé? Within minutes, she found herself saying, "Forget it." The conversation was over. But for the first time, she noticed something. Every time she expressed hurt, she somehow ended up comforting him instead. Days later, Naya sat in her apartment, looking at the engagement ring resting on the kitchen counter. It sparkled beautifully. Yet, every time she looked at it, she felt heavy. She wasn't afraid of marriage. She was afraid of marriage. She was afraid that this feeling, this constant questioning of herself, would become the rest of her life. The next morning, she asked Ethan if they could meet. He smiled as he walked toward her. "You're glowing," he said. She didn't smile back. "I don't think we should get married." For a second, he simply stared. Then came the question, Is there someone else? No. So where is this coming from? Naya took a deep breath. "I've spent so much time trying to become the woman you needed. I don't even know who I am anymore." He reached for her hand. "We can fix this." She believed he meant every word, but she had finally learned something important. Wanting to change, isn't the same as changing. She gently slipped the ring into his hand. Tears blurred her vision as she walked away. Every step hurt, but every step also felt lighter. One Thursday afternoon, she finally walked into a therapist's office. The room was simple. A bookshelf. 2 chairs. A small garden. After a few minutes of talking, the therapist asked, "Naya, when was the first time you remember feeling that you had to earn someone's love?" The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Then, a memory chance embites. A memory she hadn't thought about in years quietly resurfaced. She was 10 years old, standing outside her father's study with a drawing she had spent hours making. She knocked. No answer? She knocked again. Finally, he opened the door just enough to peek out. "I'm busy. I just wanted to show you something." The door closed. She stood there for a long time, still holding the drawing. The therapist spoke gently. What did little Naya tell herself in that moment? Tears filled her eyes. That maybe I wasn't important enough. The therapist nodded. And what happens when a child believes that? Naya looked down. They grow into an adult who keeps trying to prove they deserve to be chosen. The room fell silent. For the first time in years. Nia wasn't crying because someone had broken her heart. She was crying because she finally understood. She started reading again. Painting again. Laughing without checking whether someone else approved. Little by little, she stopped shrinking herself to make room for everyone else. Almost a year later, she met Adrian. Not at a party. Not through friends. Not on an app. She bumped into him in the gardening section of a bookstore, while both of them reached for the same book about indoor plants. I'm sorry. He laughed. You saw it? You saw it first. She smiled. No. You can have it. He shook his head. How about we both pretend we're mature adults and flip a coin? She laughed. A real laugh. The kind she hadn't heard from herself in a long time. Adrian was different. Not because he was perfect. Because he was perfect. Because he was predictable. If he said he'd call, he'd call. If he couldn't make a date, he let her know beforehand. No wondering whether she was enough. Just peace. One evening, Nia caught herself thinking, why does this feel boring? Then she smiled. It wasn't boring. It was safe. Her heart had simply become so used to chaos. That calm felt unfamiliar. Months later, she found herself walking past the same restaurant where she had once waited nearly 2 hours for Ethan. She stopped, looked through the window, and smiled. Not because she remembered him, but because she remembered her. The woman who believed waiting made her loyal. She whispered softly. You deserved so much more than you knew. People often ask why they keep attracting the wrong people. But maybe that's not the first question we should ask. Maybe the better question is, why did the wrong people feel familiar? Because when you've spent years believing love must be earned, consistency feels suspicious, boundaries feel selfish, and peace feels boring. The day Nia stopped chasing people who made her question her worth, she discovered something she had been searching for all along. Not the perfect partner, but the version of herself, sometimes the love that changes your life, isn't the love someone else gives you. It's the love you finally decide to give yourself